Hello everybody, Steven here with Cardboard Coalition, and today I figured I'd bring you should be a really quick how to play of Ragnarocks. This is from Grey Fox Games. It is for, it went way down there. It's for 2 to 6 players, for ages 14 plus, and it takes about 30 minutes. Now I would argue though you could play it up to 6 players, it's best played at 2. I believe in the rule book it tells you it's best played with 2, but you can play it with 6. Now, we're going to go through the setup, and this is for the basic setup, for the basic game without using powers, and then we'll talk about how to use the powers. So for the basic setup, they tell you to go ahead, you want to remove this, which is the tree, right? Yggdrasil? I can't remember the name of it. It's the tree that connects all the realms. You go ahead and put that out. And you go ahead and you take all of the rune stones and you put them in easy reach of both players. I kind of split them up to do it symmetrical. The next thing you do is you determine who's going to be the ivory player, who's going to be the red player. Ivory player gets to go first. There's certain places that they place and stuff like that. So you decide who is going to be what color, you give them that color. Then you go ahead and take the game board and you decide which side. You have this side, which is a plain side, just a very basic grid, and then you have this side, which is it's a little more artsy fartsy. There's no difference. There's just a volcano and mountains and trees and stuff put in. So let's go ahead and put it down on this side. Once you have your board down, then white player goes ahead and places, or ivory player is what they keep calling it. And what you do is you find where the 5 hexes are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you go ahead and place, ivory places their characters in the center 3 of those 5 hexes. Now the red player finds the 9 hexes, which is directly across. And they go ahead and they put their 3 players in the middle of the 9 hexes. So now both players are set up and ready to go. Now as you can see, you have hexes here. The grid is made up of hexes. You can tell the outside by the light blue line. And this determines how you move. Now, if you were to play with the cards, which is considered the advanced mode, and in the advanced mode, there's a simple mode. There's simple cards and there's more advanced cards, so just bear with me. So I just realized I do paint and I forgot to wash my hands before I made this video. Well, I washed my hands, but I forgot to scrub the paint off. There we go. Anyways, so if you're playing the more advanced mode, or you're playing, you could look at it as playing it with the powers. You go ahead and take this deck, you give it a shuffle. Ivory player grabs 2 cards, or they choose 2 cards. I don't think you do it randomly. For some reason, I keep doing it randomly. So it is choosing 2 cards now that I think about it. So the ivory player would go through these and they would pick 2 cards that they like. I shuffled it because, you know, I'm used to Santorini, which is games based off and you shuffle and pass out. You do not do that. You go ahead and you grab 2 cards. Ivory picks 2 cards. They go ahead and hand them over to the red player. The red player would pick what card they want for their power. The ivory player gets the other card. That is if you're playing with powers. In this example, we are not going to go over specifically the powers, just generally how to play the game. And it does tell you to play the game without the powers first a couple times so you get the hang of it, and then go ahead and throw in the powers. And as I said, where is it? Here's the book. In the book, you'll be able to find simple powers, which usually are the easier ones to understand. And then they'll tell you the advanced powers, so it can help you pick who you want to use. All right, so once we got it set up, it's time to go over what you do on your turn and all that good stuff. Now this game is an area control. You're trying to control the most area here. And you do that by blocking off the other Viking from being able to, the Vikings or the other player from being able to move around the board. Now on your turn, there are 3 things that you do. You select and move a Viking, or you select a Viking, you move the Viking, and then you summon a rune stone. So the reason it says select a Viking is because you have to pick an eligible Viking. That means a Viking that's in an area that's still contested. And these areas are called the contested zones. So right now the entire board's contested because we have players of both colors there. So you go ahead and you pick one of those players and you move them in any direction that the hex allows. So you have 6 directions, so you can move in any direction and you can move as far as you want. Once you move that Viking, you go ahead and take a rune stone. This is the third part, is called summoning. You take a rune stone and you can move it just like a Viking. So it can go in any of the directions, any of the 6 if it's possible. You can't go off the map. So right now they only have 4 directions, and you take that rune stone and you could place it as far as you want to put it. And then you stop, and that's the end of the summoning phase, and your turn is done. Then it's the other player's turn. They go ahead, oops, I knocked that pretty bad. They go ahead and they select a Viking that's in a contested area. They go ahead and move that Viking as far as they want to move them, right? And then they go ahead, I'm trying to line this up so I can do it, move the Viking as far as they want to move it, and it has to be, right, in one of the directions. And then they go ahead and they summon, and they take a rune, and they go ahead and place it wherever they want. Now, this Viking can place it in any direction. But remember, this game is really trying to block off your enemies and keep the most space for yourself. Right? So that's basically how the moves go. Select a Viking, move the Viking, summon a runestone, which is picking it up and then moving it and placing it. Now you keep going back and forth until there are no moves left. And what it means by there's no moves is, this is going to look horrible, but let's just say, for example, this area, oops, is blocked off. It's going to take a lot to block it off. There would be a lot of movement involved, obviously. But as you notice, this area is blocked off. This Viking cannot move anymore, right? Once all the Vikings are set where they can't move anymore, where you cannot select a Viking, so they're in an area by themselves, they're not in a contested area, then you have to pass. Once both players have passed, it means they have no valid moves, then the game is over. Right? And you can have some instances, your Viking can be somewhere, let's go like this, right? Let's say there's a Viking right here. Let's go ahead and put some more of these rune stones out. They have been cordoning off their areas. This would be a very simple game because there's a lot of big winning here, right? Now, Ivory, on their turn, if the board looked like this, they have, what is it called? Settled. So this is a settled area because they're all Vikings. Well, actually, yeah, it's a settled area, right? Because they cannot pick any Viking. All their Vikings right here are in this region, because this region's blocked off by this Viking, are in this region, so they cannot move. On a move phase, this Viking cannot move into a space with another Viking, a space with a rune stone, or move through a space with a rune stone, or a space with another Viking. So this Viking is stuck here. They're in what's considered a settled area, so they can't move any of their Vikings. They would have to say, I pass. Now, red is also sitting here in a settled area. They cannot move their Vikings. So then red would pass, right? So neither Viking can move, both Vikings pass. Now, if you have an area like, I'm just trying to make it a little bigger, like this. This is considered a wild area. This will probably come into effect when you use the cards, but this is considered a wild area. No Vikings there, and it's closed off, right? So, once you have this done, here, let's do this too, just for the scoring, so I can kind of explain the scoring, because that's pretty simple. Once both players have no valid moves that they can make, the game's over, and you go into the the end game phase, which is just scoring, right? You go into the scoring phase. And scoring is pretty simple. What you do is you look at the area, you count all the spaces that are in that area, and those spaces count up to be the points. So you count those areas. So this one right here would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, right? There's 16 spaces there, and then they have all these spaces right here. These do not count. You don't count the rune stones, so it'd take away, same with that rune stone. And then you just count up both sides. You see how many red has, you see how many white has, and then you go ahead and win. On this quick setup scenario, obviously red, looks like red pretty much crushed white because they have a lot of open space, and they have their Vikings over there. Once you do the scoring, once you count up those those hexes, you figure out who wins, and that's the end of the game. Now, like I said, I'm not going to go deep into it, but I'll talk about a quick second. If you're using the powers will tell you when you can use those powers. Like this one says at the end of your turn, you have one moving. Some of them will have two things set up. So some of them you will change how you'll do something extra during the setup, and then it'll say when summoning, right? And then before move, I think there's into your turn, there's after summoning, there's after moving, I believe. So the cards will tell you when they come into effect. So these cards, you could use them over and over and over again as long as that is triggered, right? Some of them obviously you don't, like this one you wouldn't because it's the end of your turn. One is when moving. Wasn't there one that was just when scoring? If it just says when scoring, then you do it then. But the cards will tell you when you can do your special ability. And that is basically how you play, well, not basically, that is how you play Ragnarocks, right, from Grey Fox Games. I'm Steven with Cardboard Coalition. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.